Boyle Heights Community Plan Update. It's a presentation. Once the presentation is done, we'll have a quick Q&A from the audience, followed by Q&A from the board with whatever remaining time is there.
Can we try one other light so that people can see the screen?
As long as nobody's going to trip.
Okay, let me just try it. I'm just going to try it real quick.
I'm just going to angle it a little bit so you guys can
Yeah.
see.
Could everybody still see the paper? Will be okay? All right. We also have copies of the presentation. In English and Spanish and English.
That's the question I'm going to ask from now on for anybody who ever wants to do anything is, how are you committed time-wise? Did I ask you that? Yeah, you did. And I did. I gave up something. Granted, I wanted to give it up, but...
So, you know.
All right. Good evening. Thank you guys for all being here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity on your agenda to come and present. My name is Karen Ricci. I'm here from the Department of City Planning. I'm one of the planners on the Community Plan Update. This fall, we're going to be having 2 open houses. Some of you may have seen the flyers already. We have some at the back as well, and we're going to be distributing them throughout the community. And we can email them out to anyone who's on our email list, and we have a sign-up sheet too in case anyone wants to add their contact information after the presentation. We'll make sure that everyone gets copies of those and is aware of the upcoming meetings. We're having one on October 24th in the evening at Roosevelt High School, and then another one on Saturday, October 28th during the daytime at Boyle Heights City Hall across the street. As some of you may know, the Boyle Heights Community Plan has been in the process for about 10 years now. Throughout that process, we've done a number of outreach. We've done a lot of outreach. We did some outreach back in 2006 to 2009, and then once the plan kind of geared up again in 2013, we held a series of workshops and focus groups in the community to focus on topics such as housing, mobility. We did some Planning 101 trainings, and then in 2014 we had more workshops to hear from the community what kinds of things you guys wanted to see as we update the community plan. So the community plan is one of the elements of the general plan, and the reason that the community plan is important is because it helps kind of give a guide for all the future development that will come into a community plan area. As we've been doing this outreach, after we took all the notes from 2013, 2014, we went back and we drafted our plan. We've created new zoning tools. There is a comprehensive citywide zoning code update that's occurring. It's called Recode. Some of you may have heard of this project. So we will be incorporating new zoning in the entire plan area through Recode, and then we're also going to be releasing a draft plan. We'll have goals and policies guiding the future of the community plan area at the October open houses. Here's an overview of what the process is for a community plan. So you can see at the beginning, there's some background research, some initial community input that goes into it. Right now, we are having our first round of open houses, which is going to be this fall. And then early next year, we anticipate releasing our draft EIR, which is our environmental impact report. It's the environmental analysis document for the plan. And then after that, we'll also have another open house that will have a public hearing, but we'll take public comment on the plan, and we'll have a comment period for the draft EIR as well. After that public hearing, we'll be starting to go through the adoption process. We'll go to the City Planning Commission. We'll go through City Council. So today we wanted to give you an overview of some of the overarching topics that we've heard throughout our outreach process and tell you some of the tools and some of the policies that we have to address those. The first topic that we'll cover is housing. So Boyle Heights needs to have a diverse supply of housing types and different affordability levels throughout the community. And we've been trying to think of how to creatively create some kind of affordable housing in the community. So what we've come up with is an incentive system. And what that means is that in exchange for providing affordable housing at different levels in the community, a developer or a property owner can ask for additional development rights such as height or FAR or density if they are providing that affordable housing. Last November, Measure JJJ passed, which was approved by city voters, and it was a citywide initiative that created a benefit system just like this one, except it applies at a citywide level. It gives us some room to tailor the incentives to fit the community. So what we've done is we have adopted our own incentive system for the entirety of Boyle Heights. so that the incentives that are being given away are more appropriate with the character of the neighborhood instead of things that were developed to apply at a citywide level. Another thing that we've done with our new zoning code is we've created a new zone for the majority of the residential areas that are currently built out. A lot of the properties in the residential areas of Boyle Heights right now are built all the way to the back property line. There's an additional unit, there's a garage, the whole building goes all the way to the back. That's actually not permitted under the existing zoning on most of those properties right now. So what we've done is we've created a new zone that does accommodate for that. And what we're hoping that can encourage is the addition of another unit on properties that already have a building at the front of the lot without needing to demolish that existing building. The areas that we're primarily incentivizing the affordable housing are focused around transit. You can see here around First and Soto Station, Indiana Station, and then along Whittier Boulevard as well. Throughout our outreach, we've also heard that neighborhood character is very important, and preserving the character that exists in Boyle Heights today is very important. So a couple ways that we are trying to achieve that through the plan is by, as I mentioned, maintaining the neighborhood scale. We have created zoning that mirrors what's on the ground today in most of the residential areas. That includes the same height limits that exist on those residential areas today. We're trying to kind of keep that the same way that it can be built out right now under the existing zoning. We've also created a new use district, and what that is it's the part of the zone that regulates what kinds of uses you can put on your property. So throughout the residential areas of Boyle Heights, there's a lot of tienditas or other small businesses that exist in what are actually residential zones. And those are actually also not allowed today. Those are older businesses, they have non-conforming rights. So what we've done is we've created this use district that in these residential areas actually allows for the small amount of small business to occur. There are standards that go along with it. It would have to be under a certain size, such as 2,500 square feet, to really fit in with the neighborhood character. And they would have to be located on corners, and there may be some operational conditions, such as hours of operation or other things to make sure that it fits in with the residential neighborhood around it. We've also created a conservation design area. In the area you can see here highlighted in orange. All of the orange areas were identified as potentially historic under Survey LA, which goes out and identifies historic properties in the city. And so we've created certain design elements, such as requiring a porch, requiring a certain amount of windows on the building, so that any new developments that would go into this area would have to be developed in a way that fits in with the surrounding character in that historic area. We've done something similar along Cesar Chavez, along the historic Brooklyn corridor between Cummings and Mott Street. So along here, as everyone's familiar, I'm sure there's a lot of the brick buildings. They all have similar window types. There's window trim around them, and it's all very small shopfront style businesses. So we've created an overlay there that can require certain design elements, such as, you can see here, here's an example from what the new zoning code may look like. Vertical expressions, horizontal expressions, required window depth, and entry definition. Again, this is to make sure that any new development that comes into that area is mirroring what's already there and doesn't just stand out like a sore thumb. Let's see. Jobs in the economy. Throughout our process, we've also heard that preserving the industrial land for jobs and encouraging small business are very important to Boyle Heights community. So we have a couple of different sets of policies that address this. We are preserving the industrial land for jobs. The way we're doing that is in the southern industrial area, south of Olympic, where it's a lot of the heavier industry right now. We are keeping that the same. It's going to be warehouse style buildings and some of the same heavy industrial uses that are allowed today, and building forms that can still support that. However, on the river side, the area between 1st and 7th, adjacent to the river, we've created an innovation district. So it removes some of those heavier industrial uses and still allows for the lighter industrial uses or clean industry, but still doesn't, it's not allowing for housing, but it still allows for a mix of those warehouse types and then some of the building types that you see along Anderson now, the older brick buildings. It allows for those types of buildings to occur as well. We also have policies in our plan to support street vending, and then we've also introduced a new tool into our zoning code where on some of the specific corridors we are actually going to create a maximum tenant size to prevent some of the big box stores from coming in and really promote small business along those corridors. Environmental justice and sustainability is another big key topic throughout our plan. The recent adoption of Clean Up, Green Up, if some people are familiar, it's a pilot program ordinance that was applied in Boyle Heights and Wilmington and Pacoima, and it was to create better adjacency standards between industrial and residential uses, and put certain development standards so that the residential buildings or sensitive uses would have to use certain building materials to make sure that the air is being filtered from freeways, from the toxic industrial uses, etc. So what we're working to do is we're working to actually take that ordinance and put it into the zoning code so that every zone actually has that built in. It's not a separate ordinance that someone has to go find. These standards are just part of the actual zone on the ground. We also have policies to improve compatibility between industrial land and neighborhoods. So going off of what Clean Up, Green Up did. So you can see here, this is an example of what the zoning looks like. So the orange is the residential neighborhood. This is Olympic Boulevard. The blue is the heavier industrial area. So as I mentioned, all of this right now is heavy industrial. This is residential neighborhoods. We've created a buffer zone along Olympic. So what it does is it allows for more of the heavy commercial uses. So similar to the innovation district on the riverside that I mentioned, it doesn't allow for the heavier industrial uses, but also doesn't allow for housing. And the intent of that is to make sure that there's more distance between the residential neighborhoods and the heavy industrial uses in this area.
What's the pink?
The pink is commercial. Yeah. Good question. We also want to make sure that there's more access and connectivity to the Los Angeles River, both with pedestrians and then also creating visual connections. One way that we've done that is we've created a tool. There's a new tool with the zoning code that's called outdoor amenity space. So this is similar to what open space is today. Right now with the city, there's an open space requirement if you're doing a new apartment building. You have to provide a certain amount depending on how many units you have, and it's for the residents of your building. This is actually going to apply to all kinds of development. So a certain part of your lot will have to be dedicated to outdoor amenity space. So it's an outdoor green space that can be used by tenants of the building or by the public. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute too. So mobility and connectivity is very important to Boyle Heights. There's a lot of people who take transit, who walk, who bike. And we want to make sure that we're encouraging safety enhancements for these. So one thing we're proposing is transit enhancements on Soto Street. Soto Street was identified as a safe routes to school, which means there's a number of schools along it. They want to make sure that there's better transportation, bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure for students to get to school more safely. So we want to encourage those as well as other community initiatives such as the Great Streets Initiative. I know Proyecto Pastoral has been working a lot with them. And we want to make sure that there's increased bicycle and pedestrian safety on the high injury networks that were identified in Vision Zero. And these are streets that the city identified at a citywide level have the highest amount of pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and injuries compared to how many people are traveling on that street. And there's a couple of those in Boyle Heights as well, Lorena, Soto, Cito Chavez, and a couple other ones. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging enhancing safety for everyone who's trying to get around the community. We also have policies in our plan that encourage greening alleyways. So there's a lot of alleyways in Boyle Heights that connect, but we want to make sure that those are improved and have better infrastructure to facilitate pedestrians actually using them to get around the community. Public realm and outdoor amenity space. So as I was just mentioning with the Riverside, right here is an example of what one type of outdoor amenity space can look like. So along the Riverside, what we're doing is we're actually requiring, in this area that has a green background, immediately adjacent to the river, we're requiring a higher amount of outdoor amenity space so that any project that happens there would actually have to provide more amenity space than, say, on the corner of First and Soto would have to make sure that there's more accessibility to the river, more space for people to enjoy the river. We also have something through the new zoning code that is called the frontages. So what this does, you can see here, there's two different types here. This middle one's the warehouse. So this is for like a larger industrial, large format building. And then there's the shop front, which is more for a main street corridor. This is a new tool that actually regulates the facade of the building. It's how the building meets the street. So we can require things like a certain amount of transparency, how many windows you have on your ground floor, so when you're walking, you can actually see into a business. And then it can regulate how often you have to provide an entrance. So as I was saying before on Cesar Chavez, we can require having an entrance every 50 feet so that any new projects would have to fit in with the existing character and make sure that it's very pedestrian accessible. Another thing that we can do with this tool is we can make sure that the building is actually at the street front, and we can prevent having large surface parking lots right next to the sidewalk and avoid pedestrians from having to walk from the sidewalk all the way across the parking lot to get to a business. Finally, this is an overview of what the new zoning string will look like. So what zoning is it regulates what can be done on your lot. So right now, every parcel has a zone that tells you how much you can build, what you can put there. The way our new zoning string works is the first bracket is the physical building, and then the second bracket regulates what can happen inside that building. So the form is a district that will tell you where on your lot your building can be placed, and how tall it can be, and how big it can be. And then your frontage, as we just saw, will show you how your building has to meet the street, what kind of frontage it has, what kind of facade it has. The use will tell you what uses are allowed. So as we mentioned with the tienditas going into the residential areas, that would happen in this use area. It would tell you can do residential, plus you can do, these couple small commercial businesses if it meets these rules. And then the density tells you how many units you can put on the site. So at the end of the day, every property will have this full zoning string that will tell you everything that you can do on your site. So again, we'd like to reiterate that we're having 2 open houses. In October, we will have the same material at both, but we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to attend one of them and to come back a second time if you want to learn more. We have more at the back, and we are all here for any questions.
So real quick, at the open houses, they'll be able to ask more questions at the event, right?
Yeah, at the open houses, we will have a presentation, we'll have boards with more details. We'll be releasing a draft of our actual plan with the goals and policies that we've been developing. There will be a lot more detail and a lot more time. I know we're running short on time tonight, but a lot more time to ask questions and talk more one-on-one.
So on your website.
Yes, yeah. This flyer will be posted tomorrow,
And the
presentation will be posted as well. Yeah.
Okay, so because we've got about roughly 10 minutes or so, we're just going to go board comment and public comment all at the same time. Just wait till you're called before you ask your question. So, do we have any hands? Okay. I forgot your name. I'm sorry.
Lourdes Albarán. Lourdes. Ajá. Mire, ustedes planean todo muy bonito, pero nosotros, la comunidad ya tenemos, nuestras costumbres. Nosotros, por ejemplo, los que venden elotes, si van a ir a pagar un lugar, ¿a cómo nos va a costar el elote? Nosotros estamos acostumbrados a comprar barato y en la calle, y a comer barato y en la calle. Esos espacios, los que venden en la calle no van a poder pagar.
Okay, I think that you are painting a very pretty picture, but I can tell you that we in Boyle Heights, it's part of the culture that we go out there, we go to the street vendors and we buy a local corn from the cob. And it's cheap because they don't have to go pay anything anywhere else, because if the vendors have to go and rent a space, then they're going to have to sell their merchandise or a higher price. But we can't afford that.
Y luego también en las viviendas accesibles, yo conozco una señora que fue a aplicar aquí a las que están aquí en La Boyo y le hablaron que calificaba. Entonces ella vieron el estándar, ella estaba a la mitad del estándar de que calificaba para la vivienda y le dijeron que no calificaba y luego la muchacha le habló a otra señora que había vivienda disponible. Entonces no es para nuestra comunidad.
In regards to affordable housing, I know someone who went to apply at one of these places, so-called affordable housing, and first she was told that she was eligible. Then when she went back, they told her that she was not eligible. She was like in the middle brackets, so I don't know what happened there with the income
Entonces esas viviendas no son accesibles para nuestra comunidad porque la misma gente que está ahí rechaza a la gente de la comunidad.
So basically, the units that you're offering, they're not, the community does not have access to those units. And even the people who live in these buildings, even though they have affordable units, even the people who live there, they don't want to see us, they don't want us.
Okay. All right, so,
I have a question.
Should we respond now or should we respond?
however you want to do it, it's just the amount of
Yeah, I
time.
know, yeah, we'll take all their comments.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm bad with it. I can't remember the name.
Ana.
Ana.
A mí me gustaría saber de qué manera va a impactar a la comunidad este tipo de cambio.
I would
¿Cómo
like
va
to
a
know,
impactar?
how is the community going to be, how is this change going to impact the community?
¿O solamente ustedes planean sin saber el impacto que va a causar en la comunidad? ¿Cómo desarrollan ustedes este plan?
How do you know what the impact will be in the community? Have you done any research?
¿Ustedes piensan que la comunidad está preparada para hacer este cambio?
Do you think that the community is ready to go through these changes?
Okay. Do you want to take the?
Esto se llama aburguesamiento. Entonces lo que hace el aburguesamiento es que atrae otro tipo de clase de gente que viene a nuestra comunidad. Boyle High es una comunidad pobre, lo dijeron ahorita. No hay mucha gente que gana $40,000, $60,000 al año. Y lo que nosotros necesitamos en Boyle High es vivienda. Queremos vivienda que sea accesible para estas personas. Nosotros estamos pensando mejorar Boyle High, pero con nuestra misma gente. Crecer juntos.
I think that what the
Buscar
community would
soluciones
like
para
is to.
esto, para mejorar Boyle High.
Gracias.
Okay, I have to say what you said. I think that we need to, we have worked again really hard to make some good changes in the community, but you are bringing people that are not really from the community. And all the work that we have been doing, this would be, I think that it would be for the people in the community. Not let other people come in there. We don't make $40,000. We don't make $60,000. You're talking about a different income level. They move here, and then what happened to them?
Okay. Dalmira.
Okay. Yo también estoy preocupada por todos esos desarrollos. Nosotros ya estamos afectados porque a nosotros ya se nos han quitado los pequeños negocios donde vivimos, ya no hay pequeños negocios. ¿Por qué? Porque han comprado otras personas y lo están rentando muy alto.
I'm also concerned about this new development, and we also, I have seen that we have lost a lot of small businesses.
Entonces, pues nosotros sí estamos, sí queremos mejoría en Boyle Heights, pero como dicen las compañeras, que sea con nuestra gente, y nuestra gente es de muy bajos recursos, y nosotros sabemos que hay muchas familias, hay más de 7,000 familias que necesitan vivienda, pero vivienda para la gente que gana de 25 para abajo, porque hay muchas personas que están jubiladas, pensionadas, que no agarran ni 18,000. Entonces, nosotros queremos vivienda para esa gente, para nuestra gente.
Okay, we want to, of course, we want this place to be better, but we also want the community to enjoy the new changes.
Nosotros,
okay. Okay, we need housing, but we need housing that we can afford. You're talking about people who that make $25,000, sometimes $18,000. Sometimes people are on a fixed income. So the affordable housing, what you consider as affordable housing, that is not affordable to this community.
Okay, we need to move on to the next person. Yeah.
That, like, where are the plans, like, about the need to preserve or stop of rent stabilized housing?
Do you want to start answering the questions, or do you want to take one more real quick? Let's let Veronica ask one real quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, I feel like the plan reads more of an extension of downtown LA than an actual program from Boyle Heights. Even in the community corridors map you put, a lot of the focus was on West, there's not much going on in Indiana or Lorena in bettering the community. I also think there's a catering to developers that's happening where it's creating incentives for them. If they're unwilling to create low-income housing, they might not be the right developer for our community. Additionally, I feel like you could have hiring issues required of them, like maybe local hiring 20%, minorities 15%, women, whatever. There's a couple things, the plan reads like, let's make this place prettier, nicer, and that's just honestly like trying to attract an outsider, like making it more appealing to them to come in, like bigger, higher, but there's no written format that's gonna guarantee that the people that are here will stay here and benefit. Even Sears Towers, your summaries identified it as a supermarket desert, but it's not requiring that big building to have a supermarket. Like that's a practical thing that could be written in. Also, I think it's limiting where it's all development and transition versus big ideas like making the neighborhood more green. We have issues with lead, with air pollution, and it's very limited as to what we can do when there's so many progressive ideas out there.
Hi. Alright. Okay. Your turn. You guys are.
Okay.
You want to get in before we close? Or?
Yeah. If both of us can go really quickly.
Yeah, just 30 seconds each.
I'd like to see if we can.
We're not going to be able to have time to answer anything.
Okay. All right. Go.
I'm just speaking because I really want to.
Let's go ahead.
Okay, so, first off, I think we can address some of the concerns about affordable housing. The incentive program that we mentioned is an optional thing for developers, so if they